Hello. How's everybody? Very good. Welcome, welcome, welcome. As you know, you got to hear that kind of long, extensive bio, but the short version is that I am very passionate about teaching women, especially in healing themselves and promoting their health through all modalities. So first and foremost, I have to say I'm so excited to be here. I'm looking around the room and I'm just honored because you all are a very special group of women, and there's some guys in here too. So by the way, I'll be speaking to women today, not to exclude you, but I know that you're here. I see you. But this is all about the women today. And what I'm going to try to do in a short period of time, I have my timer on and try not to get too long-winded, is to talk about 4 things: your health, your hormones, your happiness, and our healing. So as I prepared all of this, it was frankly a kind of daunting task. I thought it would be kind of simple. It sounded catchy. But as I really started to think about what that meant for you, and in particular for myself, I realized that these are the 4 H's that really definitely just guide our whole lives. It's incredible what the things we do for our health, what our hormones do for us, how our happiness just guides us or not through life, and at the end of the day, what we need to do to heal ourselves. So we're all here. Obviously, I know you're here to learn something. I had a lot of people come up to me and talk about, oh, you're going to talk about the hormones, and yeah, we're going to talk about this. And so I'm not going to get real specific on some of the things, but I'm going to ask you to indulge me as I try to bite off a little bit more than I probably can chew. All right, so like I said, we're talking about health, hormones, happiness, and healing. By the way, I have an office here in Tucson. It's called Tula Wellness, and I opened it 2 years ago. I have to say thanks to some people here in the audience because you all have inspired me and helped me. I definitely have this long bio, but at the end of the day, I basically just went to medical school and spent a lot of time studying. I had no idea what it meant to own a business and to do all these things. So Dana Reed, I have to say, she's the person who inspired me. We were eating lunch one day, and she said, you should just go and do this thing. And it was a dream of mine for a while, but I kind of suppressed it because I really didn't believe I had everything that it took to do it. So I have to say, I really am in just awe of you ladies here. How many ladies here, and guys, of course, own their own business? I just want to see a show of hands. Awesome. Okay. And how many people here are mothers? Okay, and how many people here are in long-term relationships? Got it. All right, so I just kind of got to get a feel of who I have here in the audience. So that said, I've been inspired by people like you, and I want to thank you for taking your time today to just listen and to hear, hopefully, and to gain and learn some things that I would like to share along the way. I also want to give a shout out to MJ here because she also helped coach me in the very beginnings when I had no idea what I was doing. I'm getting a little bit better. At least I do understand what I'm doing, but still figuring out how we're going to get there. Anyway, the first idea here we want to talk about, first concept, is on your health. And what are those aspects that I want to touch on today? There are 3 main things about health that I want to leave you with today. First, I'll give you my definition, or not my definition, but the World Health Organization. Health is a state of complete physical, mental, and social well-being, not merely the absence of disease or infirmity. So what that means is that it's really the whole picture of our health. When we think of our health, we think, oh, how high is my cholesterol, or what's my blood pressure, or do I have diabetes? But our health is really the whole package, just the whole picture. If we have our health, but we're depressed, if we have our health, but we feel lonely, if we have our health, we don't have communication or connections with our community, then we don't really have the whole picture. So I want you to think in terms, in the construct of health being a holistic concept. Some of the most common complaints that I hear from women who come through my office now are fatigue, depression, insomnia, thyroid imbalance, adrenal imbalance, lots of perimenopause and menopausal symptoms, infertility, PMS, and a lot of digestive problems. What are these keys to health? What are these issues that most commonly affect all of those things I just mentioned? It boils down to what you eat, the stressors in your life, and inflammation. And if any of you all have heard me talk, I know you know I feel very strongly about inflammation. I call inflammation the devil. Inflammation is really the root cause of disease in all of our lives. Inflammation causes and can be a result of stressors. Inflammation is definitely a direct result of what we eat. Inflammation is not just our body's reaction to a pathogen, but inflammation is a whole response that our body has to anything that is not in its normal, peaceful state. One concept here in terms of what you eat is grains. I don't know how many of you are familiar with the book Grain Brain. Yeah. So what it really deals with is the fact that there are so many things that we end up putting in our mouths. You have no idea. I do this every day with people, and I listen to the foods that they eat, and they have questions about how they're feeling. But at the end of the day, they are having toast and eggs and sausage for breakfast. They have a sandwich for lunch. And then for dinner, they have potatoes or chicken with maybe a vegetable included. But at the end of the day, when we have grains, especially gluten, potatoes, they can have a huge impact on how we feel. I remember several years ago, I saw a naturopathic doctor, a naturopath, and the first thing she put me on, and the first thing I put all my patients on, is what I call the allergy or food elimination diet. And what that does is it takes away all wheat, all dairy, all sugar, alcohol, soy, corn, all of what we call the trigger foods. And what trigger foods do, they can have an amazing impact on how you feel. When I took all of these things out of my diet, and maybe 2 weeks went by, I remember almost feeling euphoric. I felt like, wow, I've never felt this good in my life. I've never had this much energy. My mood was elevated, my energy was elevated, my joints didn't hurt anymore. And I remember one thing she told me is you need to take tomatoes out of your diet. And I thought, well, that's just the dumbest thing I ever heard. Who's allergic to a tomato? I put the tomatoes back in my diet. That was the first thing I did. Tomatoes are considered a nightshade. Put them back into my diet, and I was miserable. The next day, I woke up, every joint in my body hurt. I felt like I had been hit by a Mack truck, and all that energy and everything I felt had just faded away, and it was all from eating that one tomato. And that's when my eyes were open, that everything you put in your mouth affects the way you feel. So the first thing I want you to remember about your health is that everything you put in your mouth affects you. Food is your #1 drug. Another concept is the combination of foods. So this is a very interesting book by David Kessler, and he really studied the biochemistry of food and actually how it affects the endorphins, how it affects our brains. Food really can be likened to crack cocaine. When you combine a certain amount of sugar, fat, and salt in your diet, I mean, have you guys ever felt that way when you eat certain things and it's like, this is orgasmic, it tastes so good? It's because it is orgasmic. It literally releases endorphins in the brain. It's a very quick high, but the #1 addiction that we have is our food. And if you can recognize that, if you can recognize that food is affecting not only how you feel, but I would say at least 8 out of 10 people I see are on some level addicted to some type of food. For me, it's carbohydrates. For some people, it's really sugar. Other people like the salty, crunchy. But just start to notice different things that really make you feel very happy when you eat them, like chocolate, right? So that said, kale. It's not exciting, might not be sexy, but it really should be your new best friend with benefits because it is the most nutrient-dense food that you can eat. And you can do some amazing things with kale, and we won't get into that because I want to really get into more of the meat. But my point here is that food really is, at the end of the day, what impacts us most, more than anything I'm going to talk about. The second thing that affects our health mostly is stress. And everybody knows about it. Let's see, does this thing, this thing points too. Awesome. So how does stress affect us? It affects our body. How is it manifested? Headaches, infections, muscle tension, muscle twitches, fatigue, our emotions. It affects us in loss of confidence, feeling irritable, apathetic, our behavior. Actually, stress and inflammation in itself will change the way that we actually behave, make us do more risk-like behaviors, make us choose bad foods, bad things for us, instead of obviously the things that are better. And how does it affect our mind? It makes us worry, it muddles our thinking, it makes us indecisive, makes us make hasty decisions. So, for most of you, and any of you who have seen me speak, have heard me speak, you know that this is one of my favorite slides, and it's really about the fact that stress really is something that we tend to notice in the rearview mirror. We tend to realize after the fact that as things are unraveling for us, that this is really, and when you think back to it, oh my gosh, this is, when I ask people, well, what's been going on? Well, they're going through so many crazy things in their life, and they're wondering why their abdomen is hurting, or why they're having joint pains, or why they have headaches that they can't get rid of. And if you really scroll it back, 9 times out of 10, it's the stressors in our life. This was a book written about why zebras don't get ulcers. They don't get ulcers because they don't worry about the past. They don't remember, they don't worry about what's going to happen in the future. They are completely present in the moment. And probably, that's why I asked, how many of us were mothers in here? This is a huge stressor. Stress is huge. Children, I love my children dearly. I have a 10-year-old and a 12-year-old now. And I must say, that is probably one of the #1 causes of angst in my life. As much as I love my kids, you know, it speaks for itself. Let me back up a little bit and say to you that one of the reasons I'm here, and one of the reasons I even made it to Tucson, is because I was feeling like there was some feeling of unsettling in my soul. And so I decided, for a variety of reasons, to quit my job and take a job here in Tucson. I got here to Tucson. I was all ready to go. I took this job, and when I got here, I realized that that was the worst decision of my life. I had moved my whole family here. My children were crying, coming off the plane, "Mommy, I want to go home." It was awful. And when I got to the job that I had, it was not what I expected. I was miserable. My hair started falling out. I was depressed. I was gaining weight. I was just in the worst place I could be. And it was that low, it was that place, it was that space that really made me start to look at the things in my life that were making me feel that way. And I know that's an aside from this slide, but the point being is that sometimes the things that are making us really feeling like they're bringing us down are really our triggers to help us see that this is really what it is that's going to incite me and inspire me to move to a different place. So for me, I started recognizing, wow, you know, even though I was an obstetrician gynecologist, I didn't even realize that I was going through perimenopause. I didn't even realize that my thyroid was so out of whack. But the stress of that move literally turned my life upside down, and it took me in a place where I had never been before. Anybody ever been in that place? So it is relevant to stress, that stress affects our health so much. I don't know what triggered it. I don't know if it was the Tucson heat. I don't know if it was just the move, the trauma of it all, but literally my thyroid stopped working. And thanks to Dana, I have to say again, she helped me realize, even though I'm an OBGYN, but I couldn't figure out, like, what's going on with me. I couldn't remember anything. I would be in surgery. I mean, I've done over 1,000 C-sections, and I'd literally be sewing up someone, and then in the middle, I would have forgotten what I needed to be doing next. I thought I was getting early Alzheimer's. I literally was afraid, and I couldn't talk to anybody because I was like, well, if I tell anyone, you know, they're not going to even let me do this. So I had to fake it. I mean, I had to really fake it. And it was not good. Nobody got hurt. But I'm just saying, stress is real. Stress is real. It throws off our hormones. It throws off our balance. It takes us to places we don't want to go. And so the sooner you address what those stressors are and reel it back, the sooner you're going to get back on the path to your health. What does it do? It increases the severity and susceptibility to disease. The first 6 months I was here in Tucson, I had shingles off and on for 6 months. Could not get rid of them. It was awful. Decreased immune responsiveness to vaccines, diminishes your wound healing. It's pro-inflammatory, and we're going to talk about pro-inflammation and anti-inflammation in a minute. It increases abdominal fat because it affects our cortisol levels. It impairs our cognitive performance. It suppresses our thyroid function, throws our blood sugar off, increases our blood pressure, decreases bone density, muscle tissue, lowers your immunity. Stress is bad. It's not just a concept. Stress makes you sick. Chronic stress. We can go on and on and on. And these are the things, the diseases that stress really does affect. Atherosclerosis, migraines, all of the things I mentioned, and depression. We can't leave here without talking about how stress affects us emotionally. Cancer. Stress is real with cancer. They've done studies, and I'm going to cite at least 2 of them here. One study where they immobilized rats and basically stressed them out. And what they noticed is that they introduced this basically a cancer-producing compound into them, and that the rats that were stressed, their tumor load or weight doubled. And rats that also had exposure to stress, they were 50% more likely to have spread 50% more in those rats or mice that were stressed. In humans, this is a fairly recent study in 2013, and what they did is they looked at a gene. This ATF3 is a stress gene, and basically what it does is kind of activates and increases the ability for your cancer cells to spread. And what happens is they basically had people who documented what they felt their stressors were, and those that scored higher in terms of their stress actually had an increase of this transcription of this gene, and they had higher mortality rates, they had a higher rate of cancer spread, and a higher increase in cancer and other cancers that were found in their body. And what those stressors were emotional stress, stress through radiation, high-fat diets, and UV damage. Stress and food. Stress causes us to be fat, increases our blood sugar, which increases inflammation. And remember I talked about inflammation and changes our eating habits, and it's a vicious circle. So how do we kind of reel it back? How do we get past that stress? How do we try to cure ourselves of that? Through meditation is one. Meditation means to take, measure, and to care for. Oftentimes they think, oh, meditation, I'm going to sit and